identity. The full report. Amsterdam, Maccabi and hooligans on Al Jazeera.
All Al Jazeera. Talikot na? Talikot? Ang kanin? Where is my milk?
Sheikh Hamada War for Translation and International Understanding is inviting nominations for its 11th edition, starting January the 1st and ending March the 31st, 2025. For more information, please visit the award's official website at www.hta.qa.
Specialized criminal gangs are raiding South Africa's cities, not for cash or gold, but for copper. Essential for construction, communications, and transport. This lucrative commodity is everywhere, and its price is soaring. People in Power investigates the business of dismantling the country's infrastructure for scrap metal. South Africa's copper theft crisis on Al Jazeera.
Kalamansi.
Protests in Tel Aviv after Israel's cabinet delays a vote on the Gaza ceasefire deal. The Prime Minister has accused Hamas of not keeping to its part of the agreement, but the group says it's committed. Hello, I'm Darren Jordan. This is Al Jazeera, live from Doha. Also coming up, no let-up in Israeli strikes on Gaza. At least 87 Palestinians have been killed since the agreement was announced on Wednesday. More diplomacy in Damascus. Qatar's Prime Minister holds talks with Syria's new leader to discuss the political transition.
Some of the refugees are sleeping here because there's simply no space. Those have spoken to say that they want to stay closer to their homes.
And we report on the dire conditions for thousands of Sudanese refugees in South Sudan.
Hello.
Supporters of a Gaza ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas are waiting for an Israeli cabinet vote on the agreement.
It's a breakfast,
But
guys.
politicians in Israel appear to be split ahead of its planned implementation on Sunday. Israel's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir is threatening to resign from Prime Minister Netanyahu's government if it approves the deal. Netanyahu is now accusing Hamas of reneging on parts of the agreement, which involves the release of Israeli captives being held in Gaza. Amber Salute has more on the divisions in Israel's government over the deal. She's reporting from Amman because Israel's banned Al Jazeera from operating in South
ceasefire?
The outstanding issues between Israel and Hamas relating to a ceasefire agreement have reportedly been solved. The Israeli president said that these were minor issues that would definitely be solved within hours, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office early on Thursday released a statement saying that there were issues Hamas was backtracking on, especially when it came to the issue of Palestinian prisoners who were going to be released from Israeli jails as part of this deal. But there's also a backdrop.
Hello, good morning. It's a breakfast, guys.
With his right-wing government, there was supposed to be a vote within the Israeli cabinet Thursday morning, which has now been postponed to Friday morning because of the internal disputes with right-wing members of the coalition. Bezalel Smotrich's religious Zionism party and Itamar Ben-Gvir's Jewish Power Party, who are essentially issuing a permanent ceasefire. However, what's outlined in the deal in phase 2 and 3 does progress towards a permanent end to the war. But these parties are threatening to leave Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition. They're threatening to bolt the government entirely if this vote goes through on Friday morning. I'm the Al Jazeera, Amman.
Well, Hamas says it rejects accusations it's backtracking on any part of the deal.
Regarding the claims of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office, I confirm that Hamas is committed to what was agreed upon and to the ceasefire agreement that was announced by the mediators, and no amendments were added. I hope that such statements from Netanyahu's office are not an attempt to evade their commitment to the ceasefire agreement.
Outgoing US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says he's confident the deal will come into effect on Sunday as planned.
It's not exactly surprising that in a process, negotiation that has been this challenging, this fraught, you may get a loose end. We're tying up that loose end as we speak. I've been on the phone in one way or another all morning with Brett McGurk, with our Qatari friends, and I'm very confident that this is moving forward, and we'll see the start of implementation of the agreement on Sunday.
Families of captives held in Gaza have gathered in Tel Aviv, calling on Israel to accept the ceasefire deal. Demonstrators have been demanding that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu secure the safe return of their loved ones. Protests like these have been taking place almost weekly across Israel since October 2023. Meanwhile, in West Jerusalem, hundreds of protesters attended a rally near the Israeli parliament and government ministries. They gathered to demonstrate against ending hostilities in the Gaza Strip. Mal Zinon is an Israeli peace activist whose parents were killed in the October 7th attack. He says the ceasefire deal is an opportunity that must be seized by both Israelis and Palestinians.
The dynamic has been changed, and we need to continue this change, to continue the movement from only weapons of war and tools of destruction are being sent to this region, that tools of construction will be sent. And I'm calling for a Marshall Plan, for Gaza, for a Marshall Plan for the West Bank that will offer a new horizon, political horizon, economic horizon, and horizon where humanity prevails, that we choose humanity and not choose war, revenge, and more agony. We suffered enough. Both Palestinians and Israelis, we suffered enough, and it's time to rise from the ashes and to start something new, something positive, something that will make sure that it's never going to happen again. Those 15 months must never happen again.
Well, the war in Gaza has killed more than 46,700 Palestinians, and the Israeli bombing of Gaza continues despite the deal with Hamas. Intense airstrikes are still being carried out across the Strip. At least 87 Palestinians have been killed since the announcement was made on Wednesday.
The delay of this truce till Sunday means we have new catastrophes every day, every hour. Every delay means one family is killed. The proof of what I'm saying are the martyrs.
Al Jazeera's Hani Mahmoud has more now from Deir al-Balah.
Within the past 24 hours, the Israeli military scaled up its attacks across the Gaza Strip, mainly targeting more buildings and more public facilities and more people killed inside the homes and the shelters. They have been seeking refuge and protection inside. Just the past few hours have been quite difficult and bloody here in a central area, mainly in the Syria refugee camp, where artillery and drone attacks and struck buildings and people and more destruction to remaining buildings further to Gaza, to the north, to Gaza City, where the majority of people killed happen to be from areas in the eastern part of Gaza City, at the city center of old Gaza, killing already since dawn time about 40 people. And if we just look at the span of time from the moment the ceasefire or the agreement of the ceasefire was announced to now, we're looking at 87 people being killed, one of them happened to be children, and 25 women among the dead already, as the intense bombing campaign continued to destroy majority of the buildings and majority of the public facilities that have turned into shelters. The destruction of homes have forced hundreds of thousands of people to seek shelters in makeshift tents and tent camps, or in temporary shelters inside these public facilities, despite the damage that has been caused.
We're watching news from Gaza.
Despite the moment of happiness and excitement as the ceasefire announcement was made, they're still anxious, and they're still expressing their cautious optimism. And from this time to Sunday, it's going to be a very long time for the ceasefire to take effect, and the worry increases as more people are going to die the longer it takes. Hani Mahmoud, Al Jazeera, from Deir Balah City, Palestine.
Well, one of the Israeli strikes carried out after the ceasefire deal was announced killed 20 Palestinians in Jabalia. That's in northern Gaza.
Yeah.
Al Jazeera's Ibrahim Al-Khalili, who has more from the scene of that attack.
After the ceasefire announcement yesterday, the Israeli fighter jets have intensified their attacks, targeting several homes across the Gaza Strip. I'm now standing in Jabalia city. The Israeli fighter jets have targeted this residential building. At least 20 Palestinians were killed and dozens were injured and transported to the nearest hospital. The situation here is getting much more dire. As you can see, the scale of the destruction inflicted to this residential building and the buildings around this targeted home. As you can see here, civilians are trying to move from shock state after they have been celebrating yesterday the ceasefire announcement. They ended up being targeted and brutally killed at midnight.
As we were celebrating the ceasefire announcement, the Israeli warplanes took us by surprise. I woke up to find myself lying in hospital with head injuries. All my brothers and my aunts were killed. I miraculously survived as a civil defense member pulled me from under the rubble.
We were gathering at home happily because of the announcement. I already lost a sister with her husband and all their children to this war. As I was about to sleep, I heard a loud explosion. Ran up by the whole building next to me, level to the ground. Nothing but rubble, just the dark sky. I heard screams from under the concrete ruins. Some civil defense members rushed to our help. With our bare hands, we managed to pull out the dead and a few survivors.
Civilians who were sleeping inside this destroyed residential building. As we have spoken to civilians, there are many still under rubble. They were still liberated last night. They unfortunately have been targeted and brutally killed. Civilians are trying to just move the debris from the street just to get back to life. These civilians are waiting cautiously just to celebrate the ceasefire taking effect. Ibrahim Khalili, Al Jazeera, Northern Gaza, Palestine.
Well, Marwan Bashara is Al Jazeera's senior political analyst. He says the recent strikes are beyond comprehension.
It's inhumane, that's why it's incomprehensible. It's inhumane and it's terribly non-strategic. There is no strategic rationale to kill 2 baby girls today, for example. Or what's the strategic rationale for killing dozens of people within 48 hours after agreeing to a ceasefire? What's the point of killing more than 100 people by Sunday within those 72 hours? It's incomprehensible, but it's also sadistic, petty, disgusting.
Water you want?
And it goes a long way to show the kind of mindset that this government has going into the ceasefire.
Ibabaw sa akong gyapon ng milk.
Bit of a preview, if you will, because if that's their attitude towards the 72 hours into a ceasefire, then what exactly will be their intentions in terms of respecting and implementing the ceasefire and moving from stage 1 to stage 2? Clearly, this Israeli government cannot be trusted at all with a ceasefire, let alone with a 3/3 stage towards a peace in Israel.
ministers demanding that Israel withdraw from Syria's buffer zone near the occupied Golan Heights. Mohammed bin Abdurrahman al-Thani was speaking in Damascus, where he met the new Syrian leader Ahmed al-Shara discuss the country's political transition. The Qatari Prime Minister described Israel's seizure of the buffer zone as reckless. He's the latest foreign official to visit Damascus since the Assad regime was toppled last month. At a news conference, he stressed Qatar's support for Syria's territorial integrity. Mohammed Jamjoom has more from the Syrian capital.
During his visit to Damascus on Thursday, Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdurrahman al-Thani met with the head of Syria's new administration, Ahmed al-Shara. After the meeting, there was a press conference in which the Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister promised to support Syria's new administration and to support the rebuilding of Syria's infrastructure. He also criticized Israel's advance into the buffer zone with Syria and
Kapangit ani akong kanik yung mudagan.
Here's more what he had to say.
The sanctions imposed on the country must be lifted without further delay. The sanctions will have a negative impact on the support provided to Syria. I also reiterate that Israeli occupation
You're welcome.
the opportunity to occupy further territories. Israeli forces must withdraw immediately. At the end, we wish all success and prosperity to the Syrian people, and we are prepared to continue to extend all support and assistance to the new leadership in all issues, including and mainly the lifting of sanctions on Syria.
Ahmed al-Shara, the head of Syria's new administration, also addressed Israel's presence in Syria and said his country is ready to welcome UN forces into the buffer zone. Here's more what Mr. al-Shara had to say.
The Israeli advancement in the Syrian territory was mainly attributed to the presence of Hezbollah and Iranian militias, and these were the pretext under which the Israelis continued to advance within the Syrian territories, including the buffer zone. Since day one, we've spoken to the international players that Syria is committed to honour the 1974 Accord. We're also prepared to receive the UN forces in order to restore the situation as was before the recent advancement by Israeli forces.
In that press conference, it was also announced that Qatar is going to provide support to Syria's electricity sector and that Qatar is going to continue to provide much needed humanitarian aid to Syria. Mohammed Jamjoom, Al Jazeera, Damascus.
Lots more to come here in Al Jazeera, including police in South Africa and efforts to rescue miners trapped in an illegal mine. At least 78 bodies have been recovered. Plus,
I'm still available. More than 80,000 people are still waiting to get back into their homes or what was left of their homes. Authorities say it will be at least, at the very least, a week before anybody's allowed there.
Illegal ba? Ano kayon? Natugan sila. Natrap, di na sila makuha.
It's not as cold as it was, despite it being winter sun. It's strong enough to lift temperatures a bit, and though the cold air is still not as cold as it was, I'm sure Hokkaido will get snow from it for at least the rest of Friday and parts of Saturday, but the wind becomes rather lighter then. Beijing's +7, Harbin's -2, and Shanghai's 12 are all coming up a little bit because there's nothing really cold to stop the sun doing its work. Days are slightly longer than nights after all. But the seasonal wind is still quite strong and it's still dragging a lot of rain, daily showers, persistent rain sometimes in Peninsula Malaysia, Singapore and Sumatra and Western Java and parts of Borneo. Less so the Philippines, I suspect. That's the case the next couple of days. The concentration just wants to be over Singapore, which has had twice the average monthly rainfall so far. We're halfway through the month. For India, the fog is persistent in New Delhi and to parts northwest, not so much further east. It's much better in Varanasi, for example. Rain is likely to increase in Sri Lanka and possibly just come across into the Indian mainland just a little bit by the time we get to the end of Saturday. Lahore's weather's not suffering too much from fog at the moment. A couple of days, Saturday Sunday should be fine before that fog tries to return on Monday.
In the early hours of November the 8th, violence erupted between Maccabi people in Amsterdam. Was it an anti-Semitic attack or a response to provocation? Al Jazeera looks at how a street confrontation turned into a political flashpoint in the Netherlands, reigniting debates about immigration, religion and identity. The full report.
Lord ko naman kung ininugatas eh.
Maccabi and Hooligans
Disgusting naman.
on Al Jazeera.
Banana chips. Let's eat banana chips.
Hello again, you're watching Al Jazeera. A quick reminder of our top stories here this hour. Israeli media is reporting that a cabinet meeting to vote on the ceasefire deal in Gaza will be held on Friday. Israel is accusing Hamas of not holding up its part of the agreement, an allegation that Hamas rejects. Well, that deal is supposed to come into force on Sunday, but the Israeli bombing across Gaza continues. At least 87 Palestinians have been killed since the announcement
Delicious banana chips.
Wednesday. And Qatar's Prime Minister is demanding
From
that Israel withdraw
Philippines
from Syria's
delicacies.
buffer zone near the occupied Golan Heights.
It's a Philippines delicacies. No, Mindanao delicacies.
Shara to discuss the country's political transition. The US government has imposed sanctions on Sudan's leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. The army chief has been fighting a 2-year civil war for control of Sudan. The move comes a week after the US imposed sanctions on Burhan's opponent in the conflict, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo.
Water?
Burhan has served as Sudan's leader since 2021.
Wala ka inom.
For nearly 2 years after it began, the conflict in Sudan has killed tens of thousands of people and driven millions from their homes. More than 840,000 have fled to neighboring
Yeah, it's a sweet. It's a kind of
over 120,000
sweet.
have crossed over since
It's a
November
kind of
alone.
sweet.
Catherine Soy has been to South Sudan's border town of Renk.
It's a kind of sweet banana chips.
The two transit
Sweet,
centers
not so
in
sweet.
Renk have no space to accommodate more displaced people from Sudan. They were supposed to host a few thousand for a short while. Now 16,000
Average,
are camped
just
there.
average. Hello,
New
English, just average.
Amman Yusuf and her family fled from Jazeera state, where fighting has intensified.
We moved a lot in Sudan. We were afraid of the bullets. We were afraid of the rapid support forces. They were killing us.
Adota Moram was a medical student back home. She wants to complete her studies in a third country.
A big problem in this place. We have nothing to eat. We have nothing to eat. This is
More than 120,000 people have crossed the border since November. Many are coming in through informal border crossings, where they're living rough with very little survival.
Some of the refugees are sleeping here because there's simply no space. Those we've spoken to say that they want to stay closer to their homes, no matter how desperate the situation is here.
Hussein Gaduwel took 5 days to get here from Sennar region, all the while evading security checks manned by armed men.
The plane was bombing people. The rapid support forces were killing people. We had to run. We were jumping over dead bodies as we fled.
Many here are hoping that the crisis will be resolved at some point, but they also know it could be months, maybe even years, before they return to their homes. Catherine Soy, Al Jazeera, Renk, South Sudan.
A rescue operation
it's not hot.
in South Africa has now ended. At least 78 people died during a police siege in what a labour union described as a state-sponsored massacre. Police say 246 people have been arrested alive since Monday. Al Jazeera's Harry Matassa reports from Stilfontein in the northwest province.
The cage that brought more than 200 miners to the surface completes its final task. Cameras and audio devices mounted onto it have recorded what's happening down this illegal gold mine in Stilfontein, South Africa.
We scanned with the cameras, looking for people that may stand there that would like to come out, and then also hearing any voices. We didn't detect anything. Thereafter, we lowered the conveyance down to 2,200 meters, where we reached a water level, and up until that point, we haven't detected any persons that's in need of help to come out.
Police had been guarding the shaft since August, at times cutting off food and water supplies to force the informal miners out. Officials say those rescued alive will all face illegal mining and immigration charges. Most of the miners are undocumented foreigners from countries such as Mozambique, Lesotho, and Zimbabwe.
We want to make sure that we identify and satisfy ourselves as to who are Zimbabweans among those who are deceased. And then we'll take our next step in the repatriation of the deceased back to Zimbabwe so that they have a decent burial in Zimbabwe.
Operation Close the Hole is part of a police crackdown on illegal mining, which South Africa's government calls a war on the economy. Illegal mining is a big problem in South Africa. Police say they may have managed to stop activities at this particular mine, but there are thousands of other abandoned mines across the country that are still operating. Rescue workers say there is no way of knowing if there are bodies in the other tunnels or shafts, or if anyone else needs help. People still looking for missing relatives now have to go to hospitals, police stations, and the
Natrap, hinuon sila.
and get on.
Pwede sa kabaluon sa ang pagpasikot-sikot dira.
Al Jazeera, Stilfontein.
South Korea's impeached president Yoon Suk-yeol is spending a second night in prison after Seoul court rejected his petition for release. He was arrested on Wednesday for attempting to impose martial law in the country last month. Anti-corruption investigators have less than 24 hours left to question him, after which they must either arrest and indict him or the Ukrainian military says its forces have taken 27 Russian soldiers prisoner in the southwestern Kursk region. They published this video, which appears to show the captives identifying themselves by name and rank. Ukrainian forces launched an incursion into the Russian territory in August. Romania will hold presidential elections in May after last month's vote was annulled over claims of Russian interference. The European Union and NATO member state was plunged into turmoil after far-right candidate Călin Georgescu won the first round in December. Tens of thousands marched to Parliament on Sunday against the decision to annul the presidential election. Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, has been blocked from attending Donald Trump's inauguration after the country's top court refused to return his passport. Bolsonaro has been under investigation for the past year for his alleged involvement in an attempted coup after he lost re-election in 2022. His passport was seized as part of the probe, and on Thursday, judges found he still poses a flight risk. 2 more people have died as a result of wildfires in Los Angeles, California. At least 25 people are now confirmed dead and more than 12,000 buildings destroyed since the fires began last week. The latest victims were found in the Eaton neighborhood. Emergency crews are still trying to contain the fires, and the Los Angeles County Sheriff has warned that evacuees may have to wait another week before they can return home.
Search and rescue operations continue in both the Eaton and Palisades area. Searches are continuing, and we still have a variety of work and structures to go through. But even as we're going through some of these grids, there are areas that we are holding because we believe there may be deceased victims there.
Well, one of the worst hit areas is the seaside community of Pacific Palisades, west of Los Angeles. Phil Lavelle travelled there to learn more about the extent of the devastation.
Well, as of now, there are still more than 80,000 people under evacuation order. That means that they cannot return to their homes or what was left of their homes. They are not allowed into this neighborhood. They've been asking officials when they can go back. They're trying to really manage expectations. They are saying it will be at least a week before any people are allowed back into these communities like the Pacific Palisades. Right now, you might be able to see what's going on. You've got all of these crews in the neighborhood. You've got those from the gas companies, you've got them for the electric companies. They're going house by house or destroyed house by destroyed house, making sure that the gas is turned off, making sure that the power lines are safe. Because even though there is no electricity, there is still the hazards with those power lines that are hanging down. And there are so many issues in this neighborhood, not least the air. Although it might look like it's a very clear day, and Los Angeles does get a lot of smog, so on an ordinary day this would be classed as really good air quality, but there are so many toxins. You've got all of these houses that burn down, all of the chemicals involved, perhaps people have paint in the garage, perhaps they have batteries in their cars that exploded, or even some of the houses have asbestos. Remember, a lot of these homes were built 20, 30, 40 years ago before building codes changed So there is that fear of asbestos in the air. And at the moment, it's not that breezy, but the winds are set to pick up. And therefore, that asbestos could be a real factor for people who are coming back into that area. Not least also, you've got the issue of debris from all of those homes that exploded or caught fire and all of the debris that threw onto the ground. There is also the issue of mudslides and landslides. We've already seen one house destroyed earlier, a house that had survived, that had a lot of debris come down from the hills, landed on the roof, effectively split this house in two. And then if it does rain, and remember we've not had rain here for months, but there usually is rain this time of year. If it does rain, that could lead to landslides, which could wash these toxins down from the hills and potentially even out into the Pacific Ocean, because a lot of the storm drains here lead to the Pacific Ocean. People who aren't able to come home will not find any infrastructure. There is no power, there are no amenities. They just want to get back to their homes. But the other issue is the authorities are saying there are still 31 people missing, and there is the risk that people coming back could be clearing their homes and they could find dead bodies here. Phil Lavelle, Al Jazeera, and the Pacific Palisades.
Cuba has freed 20 prisoners jailed for protesting against the government. The move is part of a deal with the Biden administration to remove Cuba from the US list of terrorism sponsors and to ease sanctions on the country. Havana has pledged to release over 500 prisoners in the coming days. Cuba's been under a strict American trade embargo for over 60 years. US Vice President Kamala Harris is leaving office on January 20th, and it's an open question what she'll do next. Al Jazeera's Patrick O'Hain takes a look at what her future might involve.
As the sitting vice president, Kamala Harris had the unenviable job of certifying the results of the presidential race she lost to Donald Trump, cementing his future, hers very much in question. She gave an indication of how she sees her future role in her concession speech.
I will never give up. The fight is a fight I will never give up.
Using the word fight 19 times. Trump lost the 2020 presidential race to Joe Biden and ran again in 2024. But very few losing presidential candidates have run for the office again. Here, historians see a potential parallel between Harris and former President Richard Nixon.
He was within about the same margin of distance as Richard Nixon was from John Kennedy in 1960. Under 2% of the popular vote separated her from Donald Trump. So I think she can take heart that she did very well for having such a bumpy road to getting the nomination in terms of Joe Biden waiting so long to drop out. But it also means that she can go wherever she wants to go outside of politics, and she can even run again for president as Richard Nixon did 8 years later.
Another similarity, Nixon lost his first presidential race and then ran for governor of California 2 years later. Nixon lost the governorship, retired from politics, but then ran for the presidency again and won. When Harris leaves her office here behind, many of her supporters are urging her to run for the governor of California. Unlike Nixon, who was a Republican, Harris will likely win the heavily Democratic state if she wins the party's nomination.
She's also commanding a GDP that looks like that of a small nation, and it puts her in a prime position to counter Donald Trump and his narratives. I mean, California is ground zero from everything from climate change to immigration. So I think if she is the governor, it does put her in an excellent position as another executive, right, to counter Donald Trump.
She made history once, the first woman and person of color to become vice president. Becoming a governor would do it again. No state has ever elected a black woman to be governor, a potential place for her to continue to fight the man she called unstable, unfit, and a threat to democracy. Patty Colhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
The acclaimed filmmaker David Lynch, who explored America's dark underbelly in a career spanning 5 decades, has died. Lynch received 4 Oscar nominations, including Best Director nods for The Elephant Man, Blue Velvet, and Mulholland Drive. Okay, that's it from me, Dan Jordan, for now. Much more information, of course, on our website, aljazeera.com. There it is. Up Talk is next here on Al Jazeera. Stay tuned.
dedicated to defusing them one by one. Equipped with only a knife and a pair of wire cutters, he faces death every day. But does his work make him a hero or a target? Witness the D-Miner on Al Jazeera.
כן, לפני 86 שנים מחר היה ליל הבדולח. הסתערות על יהודים באשר הם יהודים על אדמת אירופה. זה חזר.
Ik begrijp het heel goed dat dit de herinnering aan Mokoms terugkomt.
Amsterdam in the early hours of November the 8th. While Dutch politicians were asleep, Israel quickly responded to violence between Maccabi Tel Aviv football supporters and residents of the Netherlands. Reports came in of dozens of Israeli fans being attacked and beaten. Tel Aviv immediately framed the violence as anti-Semitic, a pogrom even, reminding of the Holocaust during World War II. Around 5 a.m., Netanyahu announced he was sending 2 rescue planes. The Netherlands, which saw the largest number of Jews deported to extermination camps during the Holocaust, was once again unsafe for Jews.
We don't trust on the Dutch people.
Why don't you trust them?
Because what we have been to yesterday, it's not something that we have in Israel. With the Palestinians in Israel, we don't have what we have to the people.
Amsterdam was calm that morning and the rescue planes never came. Israeli fans left on regular flights. 5 of them were briefly hospitalized. A Dutch photographer accused several international media outlets of misusing these images she filmed. They were used to illustrate the so-called Jew hunt, while in fact these are Maccabi supporters attacking residents of Amsterdam. Days later, the New York Times and other media issued corrections. Netanyahu's tweet about the rescue planes has since been removed.
It was obviously being done on purpose, and it was also obviously being done with an obvious, for me, reason. I say for me because I live in the Netherlands. I'm Jewish, so I know exactly what Israel gets up to.
Before conducting their own investigation, the Dutch government and most of the national and international media immediately took on the Israeli narrative. President Biden wrote about despicable anti-Semitic attacks, echoing dark moments in history when Jews were persecuted. The leader of the Dutch ruling far-right Freedom Party calls it a pogrom on the streets of Amsterdam. We have become the Gaza of Europe, he writes, blaming Muslims with Palestinian flags of hunting down Jews.
I'm Steph Faxon in Amsterdam. In this story, we investigate how Israel could easily control the narrative in the Netherlands and how Dutch Zionist organizations have played a role, and how framing violence as anti-Semitic immediately played into the anti-immigration, anti-Islam agenda of the government with far-reaching consequences.
Amsterdam, a city full of Jewish history. Its nickname, Mokum, is the Yiddish word for safe haven, reflecting how Jews have long had a prominent place here. During Nazi occupation and the Holocaust, most of the 80,000 Jewish residents of Amsterdam were deported never to return. The most famous being 15-year-old Anne Frank. The Dutch have long struggled with this dark past and their country's role. Only recently the city opened a Holocaust museum and invited Israel's president Isaac Herzog. Hosting the president of a country on trial for genocide at the Court of Justice in The Hague caused outrage. Zionist lobby groups lashed out, saying protesting at such a historic location was anti-Semitic. Against this background, nearly 3,000 Maccabi Tel Aviv fans were allowed to arrive early in November. Quickly, it was clear they were not the usual football hooligans. They came with a political message. A taxi driver who wants his identity to be protected was attacked when he filmed Maccabi fans taking down a Palestinian flag.
was in een taxi aan het werk toen ik werd benaderd door een hooligan. Ze waren in het zwart gekleed, een met capuchon, die liep direct op mijn taxi en probeerde mij uit de auto te trekken.
10 Maccabi supporters were briefly detained. People who were attacked and racially abused by the Israeli hooligans have filed complaints with police. A few hours after the violence, I asked one Maccabi supporter about their role.
Having a fight with a taxi driver, so it seemed that there was also some kind of provocation. Yeah.
Also, you need to understand, if you press this thing, you need to understand the conflict between Israel. You know about the conflict. It's a very complicated conflict. I mean, I know.
Here in Amsterdam, you're coming for a football match and then you're taking down a Palestinian flag.
Personally, I didn't do it, but I mean, maybe they shouldn't do it. Yes, but still.
I mean, is anybody that naive that they think that was just a coincidence and they were just standing there? They were looking for a reaction.
Several people suspected of attacking Israeli supporters and randomly asking tourists for their passports have been given jail sentences for attempted manslaughter and inciting violence. On social media, a photo of Ali El-Yessa appeared, accusing him of participating in the attacks. He did witness the violence that night, he says.
Het was echt een reactie. En het heeft niks met Joden te maken, weet je. Het heeft echt letterlijk met die hooligans te maken. Het heeft echt niks met Joden te maken. Ik heb zelf Joodse vrienden. Iemand moet opkomen voor zulke mensen die lastig zijn gevallen. Onschuldige mensen. En ik weet dat zij alleen maar tegenover arme mannen kunnen, vrouwen of kinderen. En als dat niet het geval is zoals je hier zag, ja, dan ga je lopen zwemmen in de grachten.
Safely Palestine, Rico! Goed!
Wat vind je ervan dat ze in de grachten waren?
Goed vragen, Dave.
Maar ook dat ze in elkaar zijn geslagen, dat er geweld is gebruikt.
Ja, het is niet juist de manier hoe, vooral vanuit religieuze perspectief. Het is niet hoe we zijn opgevoed en maar ja, het heeft twee kanten. Het valt niet goed te keuren het gedrag, maar het valt ook niet helemaal weg te strepen.
Like the Israeli government, Zionist groups in the Netherlands also quickly framed the violence as anti-Semitic. No Dutch Jews had been attacked that night, but the events had caused a lot of fear. The chairman of Maccabi Netherlands and Maccabi Europe opened a crisis center for Israeli supporters.
Een soort lynchpartij, een pogrompartij geweest op Joden, op Israëli's. En is een van onze ergste nachtmerries is feitelijk waar geworden. En daarmee zijn ook een heleboel oude wonden eigenlijk opengereten.
Maccabi Europe is the largest Zionist social organization worldwide, with 600,000 members in 94 countries. For many years, Bezema was also active in Blue, in Dutch bij Leven en Welzijn, a Jewish security organization tasked to protect synagogues, Jewish schools and events like this pro-Israeli rally, which was held after November 7.
Stichting Bij Leven en Welzijn, which is a foundation to protect basically Jewish organizations and citizens in the Netherlands, but also an organization that has strong ties with Israeli intelligence, Shinbat and Mossad.
Interestingly, the names Maccabi and Blue are also mentioned in relation with an incident 6 months earlier. It happened at the heat of student demonstrations against Israel's war on Gaza taking place around Europe. In Amsterdam, hundreds of students have occupied a field outside the university and set up an encampment. On May 6th, a group of young men suddenly attacked them.
quite clear what their motives were. I mean, they came in with Israeli flags. Some of them were
musta naman akong mga viewers?
It was Maccabi, balaclavas.
They used fireworks in the encampment, which was quite dangerous because a lot of people were staying in tents. So there were a lot of tents and easily inflammable materials.
Similar to what happened on November 7th, the video of Palestinian solidarity protesters chasing away the attackers got most of the attention. The pro-Israeli attack was barely mentioned in mainstream media.
I was kind of worried about what the encampment, the image about the encampment would be and how it would be criminalized.
What we see in Israel and Palestine is like they are so lawless in the way they can completely violate the law and can count on the backing of the establishment, of the armed forces. And I think it's outrageous that it's in the Netherlands they can replicate this thing.
After the attack, the student encampment was evicted. 17 students and lecturers who got injured during the pro-Israel attack have filed official complaints with police. Police have not responded to our questions about the case. Omar Kabiri, a communications expert with a large following on Instagram, decided to investigate after he received information about involvement of members of Blue in the attack.
People of Stichting Blue had been spotted the whole day walking up and down. And then all of a sudden this group came together. When they noticed that they were being filmed, they put masks on so they weren't recognized. And then like 400 to 500 meters later on, the instigation starts.
Omar's source, who he says comes from pro-Israel circles, also gave him the name of the man filming the counterattack.
Everybody gets attacked. He walks through, then he gets hit, then his buddy asks him, do you have it, do you have it? Like it's clearly an intention to record something and to make sure you have it safe. It gets posted on the most powerful Israeli media lobbyists channel.
Omar works together with advertising and IT professionals to counter the pro-Israel narrative. Some members of the team don't want to be filmed.
The bigger goal of this investigation, well, I hope to make clear how a big chunk of the Israeli lobby functions.
After Omar posted about the May 6 attack and the involvement of Maccabi and Blue on his social media channels, he was invited to meet David Bezemer.
Yeah, I think he's just really interested in what I have and what I know and what I got. Yeah, let's find out, and if they have good coffee.
After the meeting, Omar tells his team that Bezemer denies Maccabi had any involvement in the May 6 attack.
Ik ging allemaal aan en ik ben dus letterlijk aan het trappen tegen een wespennest volgens mij. Want ik weet niet of deze op de hoogte bent wat er allemaal is gebeurd in de afgelopen periode. Wat ik heel erg merk is dus dat datgene wat ik post meteen ook tot en met Israël mensen interesseert. Want dat zie ik allemaal op de stories, wie het allemaal checkt.
Goedemiddag, u spreekt met Steadfast. Ik ben op...
Bezemer declines Al Jazeera's request for an interview and tells us to talk to Blue, in which he's no longer active. In response to the questions if Maccabi Netherlands was involved, he writes,
Maccabi has 4,000 members in 22 sports clubs. I cannot follow all their private activities. On top of that, I'm not aware of any involvement of people who take part in our sport clubs.
The chairman of Blue did not reply to our request for an interview. Also active in Blue is one of the right-hand men of Geert Wilders, the leader of the largest party and de facto leader of the Netherlands. Guy Marcus-Hauer was nearly appointed Deputy Prime Minister last year after failing to pass security screening to become a Member of Parliament years before.
The Dutch intelligence received information about him, information having contact with the foreign intelligence, Israeli foreign intelligence, and also he had a gun and was not allowed to have a gun, to carry a gun. So he was removed again and is now still part of Parliament, but is not allowed to become part of the cabinet.
Huib Modderkolk has investigated the special relationship Geert Wilders has with Israel. Both Marcus-Hauer and Wilders did not respond to our request to comment.
What we found out is that he had some very good contacts, mainly through the Israeli embassy in The Hague. And in 2009 and 2010, the Dutch intelligence agency investigated those relations. Basically did a check on the contacts that he had in the Israeli embassy. It's important to stress was at that time already part of a parliamentary committee that receives intelligence information. And you don't want him to share that information with foreign intelligence, Israeli intelligence.
The outcome of the investigation is unclear, and Wilders remained an opposition politician for many years, until 2023, when his party won parliamentary elections with a landslide. Coalition partners did not accept him as a prime minister because of his strong anti-immigration and anti-Islam stance. The job went to the former head of the Dutch intelligence services, Dick Schoof, instead. After the violence in Amsterdam, it was Wilders who, in his capacity as a parliament member, received Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar at Schiphol Airport.
It's a series of coincidences that are awfully convenient to the far-right racist government of this country, and of course also very convenient to the far-right racist government of Israel.
A few weeks later, Wilders visits Israel, meets Minister of Defense Israel Katz and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is wanted for war crimes by the International Criminal Court in The Hague. As a result of the violence on November 7, the mayor of Amsterdam imposes emergency measures, banning Palestinian solidarity protests. Then a report from Israel suddenly pops up, blaming Dutch activists protesting against the war in Gaza for the violence against the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans.
Right after the violence in Amsterdam, there was this special report by the Ministry for the Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism in Israel, the Israeli ministry, and it was shared among Dutch politicians as well, as there was the national debate about this violence.
Another report of the same ministry appeared in the Jerusalem Post.
According to the report, they organized fundraising efforts across Dutch cities, amassing significant sums purportedly for humanitarian aid, but often directed toward anti-Israel and pro-Hamas causes. But then to read your own name as kind of a key player in pro-Hamas linked to also anti-Semitism, it's rather bizarre, to be honest.
Together with other NGOs, Pax recently won a case against the Dutch state, halting the supply of spare parts of F-35 fighter jets to Israel.
Several Dutch politicians had this special report.
Hier staan er toch wel behoorlijk harde dingen in over wie er achter zeg maar de pogrom heeft gezeten van 7 november.
Well, this is an interesting question. We don't know exactly how they did it.
Parliament adopted a motion allowing those named in the report to be investigated and decide if they should be on the terrorist list. After Dutch NGOs wrote a letter to Prime Minister Schoof to stop Israel's interference and questions from members of Parliament, the cabinet replied that indeed the way the report was distributed.
Politicians here that are under the direct influence of the Israeli government. They're part of what is called the Blue Network. We don't know all the organizations that are in the so-called Blue Network because this is being hidden by the Israeli government.
After receiving information about the Israel Allies Foundation Europe, based in the Netherlands, I decide to call its policy director.
There's still the big question, how did the Dutch politicians get this report? So my question is, was the Israel Alliance involved in this?
He denies the report came from him and only agrees to an interview if he can see the outcome of the film. Of the estimated 40 to 50,000 Jews living in the Netherlands, only a small number take part in Zionist and Jewish organizations that the government describes as the Jewish community.
What is, I think, quite worrying is that there is an organization that speaks for the Jewish community, but it's with the government, but it only represents, let's say, a fourth or a fifth of these Jews.
These kind of demonstrations, they're a way to weaponize anti-Semitism. They're not really facing the real anti-Semitic traditions in this country. They want to shove the anti-Semitism accusation
on Muslims, on brown people, black people, the Palestine movement, on us, on me.
10 days after November 7, the mayor of Amsterdam says on public television she should not have used the word pogrom.
Ik moet wel zeggen dat ik in de dagen daarna heb gezien hoe het woord pogrom heel politiek werd. En eigenlijk tot propaganda werd.
But damage had been done.
Ik roep het hier al 20 jaar dat we moeten stoppen met de andere kant op kijken als het gaat om de problemen met immigratie, als het gaat om de problemen met Marokkanen, als het gaat om de problemen met de islam.
En ik heb ook de beelden gezien. En gezien dat een specifieke groep jongeren met immigratieachtergrond oververtegenwoordigd is in die hit-en-run acties. Het is duidelijk dat we wat te doen hebben met elkaar in dit land.
Statements by the country's two top leaders addressing nearly 1 million Dutch Muslims and 500,000 Dutch people of Moroccan descent. Many who were born in the Netherlands or have lived here for 4 generations. The government is now investigating if they can legally remove passports of people found guilty of anti-Semitism.
Sinds 7 november zien we dat er een hele grote angst heerst binnen de moslimgemeenschap.
Together with 90 other Muslim women, Saida Darazi monitors Islamophobia and incidents have gone up in recent weeks.
Vrouwen die worden hun hoofddoeken afgetrokken, worden op straat beschreeuwd, op werk worden ze bevraagd. Vrouwen worden bespuugd, worden blikjes bier op hun gegooid.
Several motions meant to counter anti-Semitism have been adopted in Parliament, including monitoring so-called cultural and religious values of people with a migration background.
There are proposals to shut down certain mosques, to monitor Dutch people with a migration background or an Islamic background. You see that there are discriminatory proposals, and we cannot tolerate that in the Netherlands.
Of course, Jewish community is afraid. Of course, also the Muslim community is immediately also afraid. So you see these groups being put against each other. So Jews are used as a stick to hit Muslim communities.
While the supporters of Maccabi Tel Aviv have long gone, they have left behind a bitter political fallout in an increasingly divided country.
You think that was a deliberate plan even before the fans arrived?
Well, it's hard to think that it couldn't be, right? Because you have a large 3,000 people, football hooligans, arriving at the airport in Amsterdam. There's no way that the government of the Netherlands does not know who these people are. You have to remember the Prime Minister used to be the head of the Dutch Secret Service. Everybody here is horrified and outraged by what's happening in Palestine. This is throwing kerosene onto a fire. So if this isn't deliberate, it's quite a coincidence.
Yuval Gal had warned the authorities about the violent and racist reputation of the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans.
It all seems a bit too well organized, I would say. And it's very easy to suspect that they will guess that this is going to happen.
Just the other one.
Growing up on the stories of the Holocaust and the way that my family had to save themselves, I cannot stop myself from thinking this could actually happen here as well. And you know, President really talked about making sure there's less Moroccans, right? He promised to do it. This is a promise for genocide.
Sinds 7 november voor het eerst in mijn hele leven het gevoel gehad dat ik hier niet op mijn plek ben en ook niet welkom ben, ja precies, dat is het, niet welkom ben, maar ook de angst. Ook angst heb ik gevoeld van hey, nou is dit hoe het voelde voor de Tweede Wereldoorlog bijvoorbeeld.
2 weeks after the violence in Amsterdam, the International Criminal Court issues arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu, his former defense minister Yoav Gallant, and Hamas leader Mohammed Deif. a decision Netanyahu's office has called anti-Semitic and false. As an advisor of the Dutch NGO Rights Forum,
Oh my God,
former
hello
Minister
guys.
Lafont takes part in a case filed at the Dutch court to investigate Israel's threats against the ICC.
As far as I'm concerned, the most important...
I'm gonna end this live very soon. Thank you for staying the live, guys.
We say we are in The Hague,
It's short.
world capital of law and justice. If
How did you know?
in the Netherlands also violating rights of people, discrimination,
Asa?
violating...
Sakto na iya. Sakto ra na.
And you don't deserve that name anymore.
Oh. Wow. It's so nice. Okay naman na. Anong dili naman na kasya imo hanggang kasya man ako ah. Kung sa man na ni? Ni mo. Gibuhat. Duha man na.
Kaya nga kasi nga nangyari itong isa kulang dahil nga kurto eh. Ito, inano ko, kulang oh.
Kana o kasya man na. Pwede na niya. Pwede na to. Bakit nagkaganyan? Bakit nagkaganyan? What did you do?
Alpak nga yung pag-
Kani, okay ni siya. Okay ni.
Wala oh.
Anong wala dyan? Kasi nga wala tayong short. Pwede na yan siya. Total expenses. Tapos ito.
Kuwasa ni kuwasa kay mabasa.
Inventory buy.
Sinira
Ay,
mo
shit.
kasi yung ano eh.
South Africa's copper theft crisis on Al Jazeera.
Pwede na yan.
Hindi nga.
Hello everything. How are you to find out? I don't want myself.
Is threatening to resign from Netanyahu's government if it approves the deal. Under Lynch has no visions of Israel's government over the deal. She's reporting from Amman because Israel has battled Al Jazeera from operating inside the country.
The outstanding issues between Israel and Hamas related to a ceasefire agreement have reportedly been solved. The Israeli president said that these were minor issues that would definitely be solved within hours, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office early on Thursday released a statement saying that there were issues Hamas was backtracking on, especially when it came to the issue of Palestinian prisoners who were going to be released from Israeli jails as part of this deal. But there's also a backdrop of political pressure on Netanyahu with his right-wing government. There was supposed to be a vote within the Israeli cabinet Thursday morning, which has now been postponed to Friday morning because of the internal disputes with right-wing members of the coalition. We're talking about Benjamin Smotrich's religious Zionism party and Itamar Ben-Gvir's Jewish Power Party, who are essentially issuing ultimatums to the Israeli premier, saying that they're going to guarantee Israel is going to go back to all-out war and full-scale fighting after phase one of this deal because they do not want a permanent ceasefire. However, what's outlined in the deal in phase 2 and 3, it does progress towards a permanent end to the war, but these parties are threatening to leave Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition. They're threatening to blow the government entirely if this vote goes through on Friday morning. I'm the Secretary of Al Jazeera. I'm not.
Well, Hamas says it rejects accusations as backtracking on any part of the deal.
Ingon siya, gisend daw niya sa messenger. Wala man lagi niya gisend sa messenger.
Regarding the claims of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office, I confirm that Hamas is committed to what was agreed upon and to the ceasefire agreement that was announced by the mediators, and no amendments were added.
Thank you very much.
Statements from Netanyahu's office are not an attempt to evade their commitment to the ceasefire.
I'm gonna end this live.
Israeli bombing of Gaza continues despite the deal with Hamas and 10
Ay.
strikes are still being carried out across the strip.
Yung siya gisin niya.
27 Palestinians have been killed since the announcement.
Messenger niya.
The delay of this truce till Sunday means we have new catastrophes every day, every hour. Every delay means one family is killed. The proof of what I'm saying are the martyrs.
Qatar's Prime Minister has demanded that Israel withdraw from Syria's buffer zone near the occupied Golan Heights. Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al-Thani was speaking in Damascus, where he met the new Syrian leader, Ahmed al-Shara, to discuss the country's political transition. He's the latest foreign official to visit Damascus since the Assad regime was toppled last month.
The sanctions imposed on the country must be lifted without further delay. The sanctions will have a negative impact on the support provided to Syria. Also reiterate that Israeli occupation forces seized the opportunity to occupy further territories. Israeli forces must withdraw immediately. At the end, we wish all success and prosperity to the Syrian people, and we are prepared to continue to extend all support and assistance to the new leadership in all issues, including and mainly the lifting of sanctions from Syria.
2 more people have died as a result of wildfires in Los Angeles, California. At least 25 people have been found dead. Thousands of homes and schools have been destroyed since the fires began last week. The latest victims were found in the Eaton neighborhood. Emergency crews are still trying to contain the flames. The latest test of SpaceX's Starship rocket has failed. It took off as planned, but when the Starship separated from the superheavy booster, SpaceX lost contact with it. Kamala said it has been through every booster, however, returned. The launch tower has left.
Lityo pa gamay ang basura.
Ano basura yan? Mura naman kaha.
Ano, saan yun? Napay mga... Napay tubig ko. Saan naman ni Sinda yun? Oo, saan? Pwede na hindi. Oh? Manawagin.
Okay, ulit eh.
Sana yung lalagyan ko sa mo nilagay.
Kasi.
Pagka itong butangan na ako gano'n. Yung gano'n.
وحاول يركب